Well, I just want to recognize the really powerful stories that we heard from both Melissa and Kristen. And we're going to shift gears a little bit by talking about how the arts impact learning for school children. And, having been in Baltimore City Public Schools for so long, there were times that some of those schools were called combat zones. So, maybe we're looking at healing in education in a little bit different way. So I hope you see some of the themes through what we're talking about and how they relate to healing, especially vulnerable children. So here's a picture. Some of you who are in the arts world may recognize Charles Lim, his picture there. Charles is best known for his study, This Is Your Brain on Jazz, where he studies improvisation and creativity with jazz musicians and rap musicians. He's also trained doctor. He's an otolaryngologist. And Charles and I work together at Hopkins. He's just left Hopkins. He's in San Francisco now, but we're still collaborating on our research. So that's Charles' story. Mine, you see a picture of me on the playground with my beautiful kindergarten children a while back. And, my training is as an educator. So I think I show you these pictures to say how neuroeducation is just such a field where people from such different disciplines can come together and should come together to think about how we are creative thinkers and learners and how the arts can support that. The conference in Santa Fe that Bill referred to was one in which multiple diverse groups came together to think about creativity and how the arts are a big part of that. So here I am as a school principal. I am now a principal investigator. I don't think many people actually were able to go from being a principal to a principal investigator. I don't know how that happened, but here I am doing research at Johns Hopkins. But I'm going to take you back to the schoolhouse now, and this image shows what is the dialogue that is pervasive in education today, and that is high-stakes testing and what is happening in schools because of high-stake testing. So while nobody wants to shrink from accountability, we know that there are some unintended consequences. So what we've been hearing about, the power of the arts in schools, they are diminishing, as we know. Music for children, fading. Even social studies. Kids don't have time to learn about geography anymore. And I can't tell you how many times I walk in schools and the science kits are sitting unopened in the back of the room because the teachers don't have time to teach the science. So, as a school principal, I got it. I knew what my job was. My school, when I first took it over, was being looked at for state takeover for unperforming students, low test scores. And so we got it right. Year after year, we got recognition awards, and so there's a copy of one of them. And so we were really, really very adept at matching what students were being tested on, the what and how, to the what and how of teaching. But our school started to look like this. I felt we were going back in time. So I started looking at the learning sciences. What can we learn from how scientists are learning about how the brain thinks and learns? How can we turn that attention away from standards and testing and toward how learning occurs in the brain? And then how do we match that to creating schools that are vibrant, healing places for students and not places for students that actually create more stress in their lives? So I turned to the arts for this. I am not an artist, and I was lucky to get some very good parents who were arts advocates, and I felt that probably one solution was to bring the arts back into the school. And so I went into the arts education area and increased the number of teachers in the visual and performing arts, added theater and dance, and we really started to create a very vibrant arts education program in the school. And then we also took advantage, I know there are some museum people here, we took advantage of the arts and cultural institutions, but that wasn't enough. Because I still felt while the children were experiencing those outside of the classroom, inside the classroom, it still looked like that. So we began to think about how the arts could help pedagogy. How do teachers teach? And is there evidence that the arts can help to do that? So I'm going to be talking to you about research in the arts and memory and learning, and then connect that into some school-based studies that we conducted, and then have you consider the idea of the big push now is from STEM to thinking about STEAM and how the arts can help the sciences. So I'm going to turn to a favorite person of mine and Bill's too. Actually, I'm jealous. Bill just had a conversation with Eric Kandel, so kudos, Bill. Eric Kandel is a Nobel Prize winner, and he is known for discovering how memories are formed from working memory into long-term memory in the brain. I love this quotation. If you remember anything about this his book, In Search of Memory, it's because your brain is slightly different after you've finished reading it. He talks to teaching groups, and I love it when he says to teachers, you are neuroplasticians, because when children learn something and they really learn it long-term memory, their brains change. So we built on the work of Eric Kandel as sort of our theoretical framework, and then also looked toward the learning sciences, the cognitive and psychological sciences, and we found work that was conducted really mostly in labs, but talking about rehearsal of information creates long-term memories, elaborating on something, generating new information, enacting information, producing information, effort after meaning, struggling a little bit with what something means helps you to remember it more. Emotional arousal certainly helps you remember. And then seeing something. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So look at this picture for a moment. Think about Lutz's picture, his painting, Washington crossing the Delaware. Kids may study the images and think about what that might mean. And then what could we do in school instead of having students read from a textbook and fill out a worksheet? Well, they could be writing that and think about writing a story from the perspective of an American or enemy Hessian soldier. And you can see the memory effects that might recruit, or interpreting the painting, maybe through doing a dramatic scene, writing a dramatic scene, or dramatically reenacting the actual crossing of the Delaware, or painting a portrait of an individual soldier. So a second grader did just that. And you can see from his cute little drawing there that he retained a lot of information because he was able to talk about how George Washington was sad because it was Christmas night and he missed his family. And the soldiers on the left were happy, and the one is giggling because he knows it's a surprise attack against the Hessian soldiers. And the other one is happy because he knows in advance that we actually won the Battle of Trenton. And then the one in the back was just plain old cold. So you think about years later, a child is probably going to remember that content so much better by doing that than simply filling out a worksheet. So our theory is that taken together, the arts really have potential for cognitive benefits. And you heard about the emotional benefits, but the cognitive benefits are there too. So we think that the arts can help with long-term memory, long-term retention, to help students sustain attention and motivation in school, to help them develop certain thinking dispositions like persistence and reflection. You certainly heard about that from Kristen, about the reflection that occurred through using the arts. So now the question is, how do we really know that? We certainly have lots of correlational studies that show benefits of the arts, but unless you do the gold standard of research, randomized controlled trials, nobody really believes it. So we couldn't find randomized controlled trials, so at Hopkins we decided to tackle it. So we conducted 2 of those, 20 classrooms in Baltimore, a preliminary study in 1 school, and then a pilot study in 16 classrooms across 6 schools. Here's how we did the study. So here are 2 of the subjects. There are actually 4 subjects in our second study. So for example, teacher 1 taught astronomy, and you can see that she taught it in the arts and degraded condition the first quarter, and then she taught it to a different group in the non-arts and degraded condition in the second quarter. And then you see the red group of students got astronomy from teacher 1 in arts integration and environmental science from teacher 4 in non-arts. And so here's some pictures. Here are children representing the geocentric model. In chemistry, children are showing the states of matter. So here they're showing they're tightly packing themselves to show how molecules and solids might look. Now, this is one of my absolute favorite pictures. These boys had a spat in the playground the day before, and here they are thinking about creative ways to demonstrate water molecules. So look at them holding hands there, and then think about the power of the arts for healing, right? Can happen on many levels. So education doesn't have to be competitive, where we take tests and compare one child to another. It can be cooperative, and the arts can be the best vehicle for that. And here they are showing lick gas molecules. And another favorite picture was when they said, "Look, Dr. Hardiman, this is the wave." And all I could say was, "Please don't drop her." So here's astronomy. This group of children are showing with their bodies the shapes of galaxies that they've been learning. In biology, they were creating robot puppets and putting the different systems here. I think you see the skeletal systems there, and those strings are the muscular system, and they pulled them and different parts of the body moved. Some lovely drawings of plant and animal cells and the life cycle of a cell. So, did it work? Yes, it did. In the controlled condition versus the arts integrated condition, you can see in arts integration, the students retained significantly more information at post-test. We did delay testing. We did pre-test, post-test, and then 2.5 months later, we tested them again on the same content. And so we were measuring from post-test to delayed testing the percent of information that they remembered, and they remembered more of the information that they got through the arts. What is really interesting, and again, we get into how children are disenfranchised in our schools. This is the control condition. So this is traditional instruction. And this is very common of what you see in traditional instruction. So that first column shows children functioning at the basic level in reading and math. That means they're behind grade level, right? They're functioning lower than expected. And so those students learned less information to begin with and then retained less information from their higher performing peers, the one you see on the right. This actually reverses in arts integration. The students at the basic level, well, they also didn't learn as much as their higher performing peers, but they retained more than their higher performing peers. So the kids that benefited the most from this were children who were the most vulnerable in our school systems. Okay, so there it is again. There's the pre-test, there's the post-test, and then you see from the post-test that green line is the arts integration intervention, and the decay of memory is much less than in traditional instruction. So that is in a paper that is in Mind, Brain, and Education. In our second study, we found the exact same thing. Arts integration had an advantage for long-term memory. And I want to show you this because this was really an unexpected finding for us. So you can see this represents the first quarter, on the left, both groups in the first quarter, and then the second time they took the units, everybody did better the second time. And we figured, part of that's the kids are more familiar, the teachers are more familiar with the content. But so you see in the blue, or I guess it's purple there, the control, when they do traditional instruction, they do so much better. So that's the same group of children. They do so much better in the arts integrated condition. But look at this. This is really interesting. If they had arts integration first, which is right there, when they get to control, they do about the same when you control for teacher effect. So what we think is happening here, we don't know for sure, but what we think is happening is that actually they're transferring the skills from arts integration, so that some of the thoughts, so before when we talked about, and many people have written about the thinking dispositions that the arts create for children, that maybe they were drawing things on their own, even when they were being taught in a traditional way, that they were employing some of the art strategies that they learned on their own. So if that's true, then the arts might suggest that children are being more creative in their thinking if they are learning through the arts. So here we have an example of how that might happen. On the left is a ubiquitous mid-chapter review, and what the teacher gets out of this is the kid got 14 out of 14. Okay, thank you, but that's not much. On the right, the teacher tries to get at the information in a much better way, a creative way, by saying to the children, imagine a farm. Imagine the animals you want on your farm. Imagine the size of pens they should have, and calculate what you think the area and perimeter should be. So we believe that the arts have many, many benefits for children, especially our most vulnerable children. We think that it improves engagement and creative thinking and memory for content. And yet we know that we also have the same crisis as what both of you talked about, and that is the arts are being diminished in our schools across our nation. So I designed an instructional framework, the brain-targeted teaching model. It is the framework that we use for designing arts-integrated units. It talks about emotions and the physical environment. We get into learning design with big picture thinking. We get into teaching children mastery. That's where the arts integration piece comes in. We talk about teaching for application, and that's where creative thinking and problem solving comes in. And then in evaluation for learning, not just of learning. So thank you very much.